But it seems like people are just completely abandoning principles right now. And
the left does it, so why can't we?
I know. Politics is purely reactionary at this point, and just people taking cheap shots and digging lower and lower and lower and lower. And it is a worrying state of discourse right now. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Undoctrination. I'm Maggie.
And I'm Olivia.
And this week, we made such an enormous sacrifice for you guys and did the truly tedious and mentally exhausting work of combing through Twitter for the most trash takes of the week, of which there are many.
It was bad this week. I don't know about you, Maggie, but I just thought we had to do this episode because I really couldn't pick a topic from all the discourse on social media this week. It was just horrible all the way around, from like the ACAB stuff to especially the Second Amendment stuff. I've seen some horrible, like actually horrid economic takes from people who are just economically illiterate. And the worst part is that these tweets have attention. Like, people really believe this stuff. So that's why I felt like we had to dig into them.
Yeah, I don't think we took any like obscure takes from just some random reply guys. Like, these are major accounts just spewing nonsense into the void and getting a lot of attention and likes for it. And on the point about econ takes, I've noticed that there are a lot of conservatives who have absolutely abandoned capitalism. We're mostly going to cover leftist talking points about capitalism, but it seems like across the board, we are just lacking in education about what capitalism really is and what the free market is and what is actually the result of government intervention, which is kind of why we started this show, because a lot of young people have a lot of misconceptions.
Absolutely. And that's why even when I'm talking to everyday people about capitalism, I usually try to use the term free market because it has less of that connotation. But don't worry, guys, we're going to go after conservatives too, because not that we're radical centrists or anything, but it's just that conservatives, as they throw out capitalism, a lot of them are also like throwing out the Second Amendment in light of the recent shooting that we talked about in the last episode. And so we have to dive into some of these takes.
Exactly. Yeah, I think in general, people have just, especially on the right and maybe on the left, I mean, I don't see their stuff as much, but it seems like people are just completely abandoning principles right now. And
the left does it, so why can't we?
I know. Politics is purely reactionary at this point, and just people taking cheap shots and digging lower and lower and lower and lower. And it is a worrying state of discourse right now. The first tweet and the first, I guess, genre, if we will, of tweets that we're going to get into are reactions about the Nashville shooting. If you want to watch our previous episode, it was actually a deep dive on that. But this has just inspired some of the worst tweets of all time.
Literally imaginable. It's just, it's insane. Yeah. Let's pull some up.
Let's get into it. Okay. So the lovely Christina Buttons sent this tweet to me. It's from this woman named Cassandra at Cassie Wears Heels. And it's a picture of the 6 victims who tragically lost their lives in Nashville. And the caption, if you're ready.
Oh boy.
Never forget a trans person like Dylan Mulvaney killed these 6 people. Babe, what does Dylan Mulvaney have to do with this?
And you and I have gone back and forth a little bit on Dylan Mulvaney. And I think that at this point we agree that this is not a role model to follow. No. I find Dylan a little bit disturbing, actually a lot. But to compare Dylan to a homicidal killer, one who is not a trans male to female, but was a woman who I started identifying as a man. I don't think it's comparable, and I do think it's unfair to just say, oh yeah, it's trans, just like this person. Like, I see a lot of people doing this with race, obviously. Like, whenever there's, I don't know if your feed is like this. My feed is like World Star Hip Hop lately, with a bunch of accounts just retweeting like the most vile, violent crap onto my timeline. It's not people I follow. It's like my For You timeline, which
Yeah, I've
I don't,
noticed that.
I click not interested every time I see it. So I don't really know what the algorithm is doing. But the comments are just filled with like, oh yeah, a black person or a brown person or a this person or that person. It's like, I hate assigning the actions of an individual to an entire group. And so even though I don't like Dylan, I'm gonna defend them in this instance and defend trans people in this instance and say, just because you have gender dysphoria does not mean you're homicidal, does not mean you're an evil person. And I just can't believe we have to say this, but it's a lot of conservatives who in the past were very much on the side of the individual, on the side of small government, are saying, don't generalize Trump supporters. You know, anytime something happens and it's the fault of a Trump supporter, nobody wants that to be generalized that way, or the fault of a conservative. You know, there have been several shootings that I can think of where, you know, Dylan Roof, for example, he was a white supremacist and targeted black people. People could say, oh, he was a conservative, just like these people.
Just
I'm
like Trump. Yeah. And we would reasonably say that's bogus and that's completely out of touch with reality. But it really does seem like people have completely lost their marbles. And when it specifically comes to the trans issue, and this is the problem I have with it, we have just completely gone off the deep end. And now any kind of language around trans people is totally fine. Yeah, we've abandoned individualism. And again, I talked about this, and we both talked about this a lot in our previous episode about the actual shooting. When you do this kind of stuff, when you assign the blame to an entire community, it actually removes responsibility from the individual who did it.
Precisely.
And that's maddening to me.
It's like, oh, they're trans, they couldn't help it. That's essentially what that is saying. And it's taking away the onus off of Audrey Hale, the evil that was within her, the fact that she targeted the pastors, that was the pastor at that at Covenant School who was counseling her throughout whatever her mental health issues were. She targeted his daughter. And so that is not a symptom of being trans, it's a symptom of evil.
Absolutely. And you shared this tweet with me. If you want to read it, it's the video that was going around of the trans person, I guess, holding a gun and saying, you know, if you want to come and try to hurt me, like, look, I am also armed.
Yeah. So this video is, I would say, it's okay to be slightly disturbed by it just because not everybody, I don't think I would make a video like this, you know, flexing my gun at the camera and needlessly racking a bunch of rounds. The caption that this person, and I'm assuming this is a transgender male to female, the caption that this person put was, while advocating just for trans people to arm ourselves is not any kind of solution to the genocide we are facing, I do want to say that if you transphobes do try to come for me, I'm ... So it's like, okay, this person thinks they're the victim of a genocide. I strongly disagree with that. But the threats that people are taking from this is if these transphobes try to come for me, you can't really assume that this is just a person going to gun down random people in the street. It's talking specifically about people coming for them, whatever that means. And so the caption that this person put with the video is, look, another trans shooter in the making. These people are mentally unstable, and the drugs they use to transition make them even more dangerous. Ban trans people from possessing guns due to their mental instability. This person attached no receipts. I do think that there may be something to be said for the prevalence of SSRIs and hormones and pharmaceuticals in this country impacting people's mental health. I totally think that's a valid point. That doesn't mean you could take away people's guns without due process, without a study to prove that these make you homicidal, without a study to prove that these make you violent. I mean, if this person is on hormones, this is a biological male, they're on estrogen. Okay. I don't see that making somebody homicidal. This is totally unfounded. And yes, I do think that trans people should arm themselves. They're under the impression that they're under a genocide. Arm yourselves. That is well within your rights. And one female to male trans shooter recently committing a mass shooting, it's unthinkable to me that conservatives are the ones taking this viewpoint. It's really unthinkable.
Because how many times has someone gone and committed a mass shooting and then everybody runs to the internet to figure out who they are and surprise, there's a manifesto and there's some right-wing language in there, right?
And everybody takes it out of proportion and blames the entire Republican Party or blames the entire NRA or blames whoever for it. And it's just, it's awful to me. I remember when Thomas Massey's family photos were going around and he was holding a gun, his family was holding a gun, and people blamed him for the mass shooting. I mean, how is this not similar? I mean, when Republicans say, F around and find out, or come and take it, or I'm going to, you're going to pry from my cold dead hands, that is the similar messaging. If you're going to come for me, I'm going to shoot you. Yeah. I just, you may disagree with it, but it is.
Yeah. Could it be a red flag? Maybe. Is it definitive proof that this person is going to go and commit a violent act? Absolutely not. And if we're talking about disarming mentally ill people, congrats. Probably 90% of people who regularly use the internet belong in that category. So
right, we're all
chronically
online,
babe.
At this point.
Okay. And the last one on this particular subject, we've criticized the right. Great. The left has also just gone absolutely bonkers, and they're tripping over themselves with trying to figure out what to do with the pronoun situation for the shooter. So we're about to roll a clip. A little bit of context. This person on TikTok, who is a trans woman, has been going viral and getting a lot of hate because she refuses to call the shooter in Nashville by he, him pronouns, right? The shooter was a woman that put up he, him pronouns on her LinkedIn. And this trans woman is like, no, I don't respect them, so I'm not using their pronouns. Absolute queen. And there are other trans people on TikTok having an absolute fit over it. So let's roll the video.
I have several thoughts on this, Kelly. And I want to point out,
until you disagreed with me.
I liked you for the longest time.
Until you disrespected the mass shooter.
Now, I do still want to preface by saying that this is a tragedy. This should not have happened. And you are right, Kelly. 6 innocent lives were lost because a man, and get that right, that person is a trans man. So
why?
You still owe them basic human decency by calling them their pronouns and their preferred gender. Just because you don't agree with what they did, I most certainly don't agree with what he did, doesn't mean you can't give them the basic human decency of using their pronouns and or respecting them by calling them he, him.
That's my question.
Now, should he have gone and done that? No, he shouldn't have. He shouldn't have shot up a Catholic school. Was he most likely justified in wanting to at least harm the staff that potentially abused him? Maybe. I don't know. We don't know what actually happened and why he shot up the school. All we know is that he shot up the school. And it is a tragedy that happened. But back to the point that I was making. You don't get to sit there, Kelly, and misgender him. Because the media is already doing that enough. They're already hyper-focusing on the fact that the shooter is trans. Now they themselves, the media themselves, are going to misgender him. But we are better than that, Kelly. We will not.
Well, I have so many thoughts.
I have 5 million thoughts. Yeah, go ahead.
Before that they fully sent it and was like, maybe they did have a reason for killing the staff. I was thinking to myself, they keep saying, at least have respect for them, have respect for the shooter. I I didn't watch this video in depth beforehand, so I really assumed that they were going to say, well, at least have respect for the trans community. No, this person specifically named, have respect for him, the shooter. Have that basic human decency, have that basic human respect. No. Literally no. And then
full
when
stop,
he went on,
not happening.
Full stop, not happening. I don't care what you prefer. You're dead. Your pronouns are, was, were now. But then when they went on to say, well, maybe they were a little justified. We don't know what happened. First of all, we do know what happened. We know that this person was counseled by the pastor at that school. She chose between two schools. I think the pastor's child went to a different school, and the one that was unfortunately murdered went to Covenant. And she chose that one because of the security measures that she perceived to be lesser at that school. Turns out that they may have been, because she was able to burst her way in, shoot her way in through the doors, and kill 6 innocent people. It's absurd to me to say to a person who killed three innocent children to say, oh, those 3 innocent adults, maybe they weren't so innocent. I mean, one was a custodian, I believe. Like, what did his staff member do to you?
One was a substitute teacher, and one was the principal. And here's the thing. There is no way that their murder was justified. And this person on the TikTok is essentially saying, well, if they were abused by this staff, maybe it's justified. What do you mean by abuse is what I want to know.
They mean misgendered.
Yeah. Sorry. That and violence are not the same thing. Like,
this is
not
why
even
I disagree
in the slightest.
with the premise that, a lot of these people have. And even when I was defending the previous person in that video who's racking the rounds and saying basically F around and find out, I disagree with the premise that they're under a genocide. I don't believe that transgender individuals are under a genocide. They frequently tote that they have a higher rate of death in this country, conveniently forgetting that 40% have suicidal tendencies. And it's absurd to frame it in a way that trans people just get so much abuse, and this is why they are the way that they are, and we can excuse any crime that an individual may commit because they are trans. Again, it's kind of the same thing as like the conservative side does. It takes the onus off the individual. And paints all trans people like this evil person. And so what this transgender individual is doing is saying, well, if a trans person is abused and, they don't have any evidence of abuse, they're just making that up. And when the definition of abuse is, honestly, it's probably something to do with like not being gender affirming or whatever, because they do consider that abuse these days.
They absolutely do.
Yeah, it's taking the onus off of that person and being like, oh, well, it may be justified. We don't know. We do know. She targeted a child and took out 2 other innocent children and 3 other innocent adults with them. That's disgusting.
What I see in this video is someone doing absolute mental gymnastics over this shooting, which, to be fair, again, every time one of these things happens, everyone rushes to not pray for the victims and their families and send support. I'm sure some people do, and God bless them. But a lot of people on the internet rush to see who the shooter was, what their motives were, and were they on our team or the other team? Because if they were on our team, then we have some mental gymnastics and some splaining to do. And it's like, you don't have to defend or like do all of these, this wordsmithing if someone allegedly belonged to your team. They didn't. They were a homicidal maniac, and you can separate yourself from them. And yeah, we don't need to have basic decency with regards to someone who just murdered a bunch of innocent children. Sorry.
And I talked about this a little bit in last week's episode, but I did do a kind of a deep dive and research into Audrey Hill's background and childhood. And to me, it appears like they did not publicly identify as a man until very recently. The really only thing I could find was like the pronouns on LinkedIn. They dressed as a woman up until very, very recently. It's like this person seemed confused, if not anything else, and of course evil. Mm-hmm. But I'm getting too worked up. Let's
hear you. I hear you. Okay, so aside from that, There were also just a litany of really trash takes about the Second Amendment. Olivia, you linked this one from, is her name Sarah Rao?
I believe that's how you pronounce it. And you guys may have already, I mean, you probably already have seen her stuff around because she's just a gold mine for cringe. So this is the woman, I'm not sure what her racial background is. She's not white, and she has created the organization like Race to Dinner or whatever. It's deconstructing whiteness and white women, and they make white women pay to have this dinner with her and her business partner, and they call them racist for the whole dinner, and then they all clap and sing Kumbaya or whatever. I don't really know.
Wait, Olivia, that's who this is?
That's who this is.
It was the same
she
person.
Does like the racist dinners.
Okay, then I have no problem with you calling her cringe because that's incredibly cringe.
She's very cringe. So this tweet, she says, the Second Amendment came from white supremacy and anti-blackness. The proliferation of guns is white supremacy. Whites buying guns en masse after Ferguson, 9/11, and COVID. Guns are the number one killer of all kids, including white kids. Ergo, white supremacy is the number one killer of white kids. Okay, girl.
Source?
So I need a source on every single sentence you put in there. I mean, I've read an article about this for Fee with Hannah Cox maybe a year or two ago. We'll link it in the description. But we dove into the racist history of gun control and proved categorically with historical evidence that the Second Amendment is actually pro-black. I mean, the first thing that freed black slaves did was arm themselves. And the first people that came for them was people trying to disarm them and take their guns away again. And this has happened time and time again throughout U.S. history. It has never been pro-black to disarm people, and it has never been white supremacist to defend the Second Amendment. It is so ridiculous. And even now today, the fastest growing demographic of new gun owners is black women. It is not white supremacists.
Really?
Yeah.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, and there's so many great organizations like Black Guns Matter and so many black rifle clubs around the country that this tweet is just ridiculous.
Yeah, shout out Maj Touré.
Shout out Maj.
But yeah, this is just along the same line of thinking of like everything I don't like is white supremacy. It's like there's no actual facts to back this up. Like the first sentence itself, the Second Amendment came from white supremacy and anti-blackness. Babe, where are you getting this from?
Can we note that she has the comments turned off? Because
she did have the comments turned off.
There's almost 1,000 quote tweets. There's 990 quote tweets right now looking at it, and there's 82 likes. So, yeah, big oof.
Yikes. Yeah, homegirl's getting ratioed.
As she should, as she deserves.
There's another, this one's really short and simple. David Hogg, who this is like his subject, and so he tweets a lot of this kind of sentiment a lot. He just simply says, "It's the guns." Which sounds a lot like he's playing Clue, like it's the candlestick in the library. It's not the guns, okay?
So profound, David. So profound. And it's weird. Did you see, we maybe can put this in post, but did you see that he tweeted a video of him shooting a shotgun and being like, I'm a gun owner. It's about the assault rifles. And people in the comments were like, didn't you just say it was about the guns? Like, why do you have a gun? He's just a hypocrite.
What?
He doesn't know what he's talking about. That's all I have to say about that. It's like, I think.
Do you think suddenly purchasing and owning a gun makes you homicidal? Like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? He
must.
Okay. Anyways, so this gun control debate also sparked, and this is for the libertarians out there, a libertarian fight to the death with none other than Joe Exotic, the Tiger King.
Did you watch Tiger King during lockdown?
Oh, girl, I binge watched Tiger King along with the rest of the world.
It was good. I liked it.
It was very good. Yeah, but Joe Exotic doesn't exactly come off in Tiger King as the most stable guy on the planet.
Which is why it's perfect for him to run as a libertarian, as I thought beforehand. But then he started getting into a fight with Angela McArdle, who's the chair of the LP. And she was just like, dude, you don't represent libertarian principles. So, of course, I go look at his website, and he's on there talking about disarming people. He's not a libertarian at all in practice. I think he just chose the third party because he didn't fit into Republicans or Democrats, and probably figured that he could get the most fame and attention in the LP, which is probably true. I mean, we had Vermin Supreme. We've had kind of joke candidates before, but it's ridiculous. So somebody on Twitter called him out and been like, okay, I looked at the second paragraph on your website. You're talking about assault weapon bans. You have a better shot against Trump in the GOP primary than you have in getting libertarian support. Your platform was not liberty, but a smattering of popular promises. Shout out to Montana's Sinif for saying that. But so Joe Exotic, the Tiger King, responds, who the hell needs an assault rifle? I want my 4-year-old to come home from school alive. If you can't protect yourself with a semi-automatic, you need to do more target practice.
Does Joe Exotic have a child?
He must. I don't really know. I guess he does. But can I just point out the fact that who the hell needs a tiger farm? I think that having a tiger farm, I mean, do you remember like in the second or third episode of that show, one of his like zookeeper's arms got torn off by a freaking tiger? Like, who needs tigers?
Do you remember when he put on like the fake EMS outfit to come and help them?
God. Oh my
Am I misremembering that? Joe Exotic is crazy. I think the reason he thinks he's he's run for president as a libertarian before.
Wait.
I'm pretty sure. Maybe
he
didn't run as a libertarian, but he definitely ran for president. The campaign video is featured in Tiger King. I urge you all to go and watch this after this episode, where he's just like admitting to all of the crazy things that he's done. And he's like, that's why I'm running for president.
And to actually attack the content of the tweet a little bit, when liberals say assault rifle, they mean the semi-automatic weapons. It's so, like, he's literally saying, who needs an assault rifle? Just use a semi-auto. That's exactly what they mean. Yeah. And I know it's confusing because assault rifle literally doesn't exist. It's a completely,
made-up term.
Subjective, made-up term. But I'm telling you guys, when they say assault rifle, they mean every semi-automatic rifle. It's just, he doesn't even know what he's talking about.
Yeah, I think liberals came up with the term assault rifle because they thought like the AR and AR-15.
I love asking liberals, tell me when they talk about banning assault rifles and AR-15s.
Like, what are you talking about?
I love asking them, what does AR stand for? 9 times out of 10, they say assault rifle.
Oh my gosh.
It's the assault rifle. I made this joke on Twitter and a lot of people took it seriously, but it was probably like a year ago. But I kind of parodied being a liberal. And I was like, we need to ban AR-15s. They stand for assault rifle, kills 15 children per second. And people were like, oh my God, ah! That's what they think it means.
Olivia, that is so spicy.
That's what they think it means.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, moving on. Do we have any more anti-2A ones? Okay. So now I guess we can move on to the ACAB tweet I found that was just, I mean, you got to respect the ACAB people. They've been talking about ACAB for like 7-8 years now, and everybody's just like, please stop. Like, the crime is horrible. Please do not defund the police. But this person named Unholy on Twitter, very fitting name, thank you. ACAB includes the fire department and the tow truck drivers. And then underneath it, they put a historical picture from the civil rights movement of firefighters hosing down like a black protester.
What did the fire department ever do to you? Okay.
Aren't they mostly volunteer? Like, I'm just so confused.
Yes. And I was talking to a friend who is an EMS worker, so does all of the ambulance stuff. And the firefighters are just the muscle that comes in to help out other emergency departments. So they're like lifting, 600-pound people out of their homes when they're having, health issues or saving people from ODs. Obviously, they're putting out fires. I don't think they rescue kittens from trees because one time I had a friend call them because their cat was stuck in a tree, and I think they just laughed at him. But
that's hilarious.
Firefighters did nothing wrong. Okay.
It's just like, okay, the example that they used for a firefighter doing something wrong was like 70 years ago. Then it's like, okay, dude.
Yeah, sorry. Firefighters don't tend to enforce unjust laws. Like, I can see where you would say that, police departments are inherently corrupt because the law and the state is inherently corrupt. But firefighters are mostly the ones actually serving the communities.
And
what about the tow truck drivers? Where do they factor into ACAB? I'm so confused.
They got towed. They tried to park in a fire lane, and then they got towed. And so they're mad at firefighters and tow truck drivers.
Actually, you know what? One time, I was parking somewhere, and my the parking ran out. It was visitor parking, and I didn't realize you had to renew it every 24 hours. I thought you just had to do it once. So I come back and my car is completely gone. So yeah, I do think you're right. I think he got towed because that was probably the most infuriating moment of my life, going to this like sketchy courtyard where there's like barbed wire and I have to pay $250 to get my car back.
Then maybe I agree with him because that's a little absurd.
ACAB includes the tow truck. The tow truck drivers.
Okay, so
it was my fault, though.
That was just ACAB. Funny. On kind of the note of race/racism, I think you put one from, who is this? Yvette Nicole Brown. She's an actress, right?
Is she? Yeah, I think so. I mean,
she's on Community, right? I feel like she's from Community.
You know what? Maybe.
All I know is she blocked my Instagram. That's all I know.
So she's responding. I think you actually put this one.
Oh, did I? Okay.
I'll read it. She's responding to some like Lobby account with 46 followers. By the way, if you have a massive account, like, you don't need to respond to the Lobies. I do it occasionally, but you're really sending an attack mob their way when you do. So this person says, are you saying all white women benefit from white supremacy, Yvette? And she said, yes. Yes, I am. Every single one. All, in all caps. Now what?
Now what? Okay, girl. First of all, Maggie,
I'm just gonna, now what? I'm gonna
me.
let you have your trash opinion.
Please apologize to me and all of our minority, LGBT, BIPOC viewers that you benefit from white supremacy.
Yeah. I'm so sorry, you guys.
Thank you. So now what? Yeah. We go to Sarah Rao's Race to Dinner and you apologize and you atone for your white supremacy.
And I have to pay her $30 million so that I can go and apologize. There was a similar tweet out the other day. It was a video. This lady was like, people that are mad about being called colonizers, you know, like your ancestors did something horrible and now you must pay. That's not justice. That's revenge for something that I didn't do, right? And I will say this, is everything easy peasy, completely equal in this country? Not necessarily, but we're doing pretty well, you know? Yeah. And you, Yvette, are a very famous actress. I assume you make tons and tons of money. So can you please stop? Like, you were able to make it in this country like a lot of other people have been able to do because capitalism and the free market has afforded you the freedom and opportunity to chase your dreams. Like, I don't necessarily think
it's weird to me, you know, when like millionaire Black people think that the average everyday white person is still above them in the social hierarchy some type of way.
I don't know that this was always the thought process. I think it's the increasing conversation about, you know, perpetual victimhood and, you know, how everything is a system of hierarchies in this culture based on race and gender and all of these things. And you have your oppression points that we get to play the oppression Olympics with. But yeah, like I also don't know why. Is she specifically calling out white women in this tweet?
I know. What did like, y'all do?
According to your logic, we're also victims.
Am I half upraising white supremacy or am I half a victim?
So.
I don't even know how.
So you have to pay half the reparations.
Yeah, I guess my mom
and receive back
My
half
mom
the
is
reparations.
upholding white supremacy by having half black children. She somehow did that to whiten the bloodline. That's probably what somebody like that would say.
I just don't think that the sins of the father are the sins of the son. I
Hey.
don't think it's fair to expect people to pay for things that their ancestors did, 100, 200, 300 years ago.
And assigning
like
evil,
you're re-victimizing someone. You're taking their property. When we're discussing that, that's where I have a huge issue.
And assigning evil and colonization only to white people or only to Europeans, you're honestly giving them way too much credit. It's crazy to me because I guess they just view black people or Africans or indigenous people of other continents as a monolith and think that they were all like dancing around and singing Kumbaya before white people got there. But that's not the case. There was African tribes colonizing each other. There was giant African empires before European colonization got there. I mean, do they think that they overtook tribes and different nations of people peacefully?
No.
I hate presentism. I hate looking at a historical events through the lens of 2023. Like, oh my God, George Washington owned slaves. We can't have him on the dollar bill. Like, are you serious? Are you serious? You would have owned slaves back then if you could afford it. Are you kidding? Like, that's just,
right. And that's
it's
not
just ridiculous.
Like, yeah. And I don't want to say that like that means that things that happened in the past were justified. I don't want to get all like Matt Walsh.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
But people should exclusively be judged on their own actions. Like you can't assign someone else's actions to me, which I did not commit. I was not around at the time and had no control over. Like that's just genuinely not fair.
Moving on.
But unfortunately, we see it often. Yeah. Moving on into Twitter's favorite topic.
Let's dive into some relationship takes because they're kind of never ending, and I kind of love them. They're really easy to laugh at.
It's so juicy. You know what I mean? Like Twitter relationship takes are so juicy because they're always so bad.
So let me ask you, Maggie, you're planning a trip to Argentina, right?
I am. I will be there for a month.
Oh, wow. What if I told you that makes you unattractive and it turns off any prospective man in your life?
That's okay because I'm going with my man.
Okay. Well, according to Sam Matheson on Twitter, it's only a matter of time before girls realize that this is one of the biggest turnoffs. And he puts a picture of, those Instagram highlights you can put of your different stories. You could sort them by different trips you went on. So this screenshot is of a girl going to Paris, Rome, a bunch of different places. And apparently this is really, really just unattractive to men to know that you're a well-traveled person.
Oh gosh.
And the way
you've experienced different things in life. That means my life won't be as impressive to you.
I think that's what he's self-conscious about, but the way that he described it is the whole game has changed, ... While you, the average guy, sits at home alone, wishing he could be with that girl that's traveling to exotic places. She is getting flown country to country by a guy that can afford it. You never stood a chance. Okay, so this is really not about the woman who's getting flown country to country. You're already implying
it's about insecurity.
You're already implying that she is being taken care of and she is in a relationship or she's dating somebody or she just has a man that's paying for her stuff already. Why does she care what's a turnoff to you who can't afford to do that for her? And also I have an issue with the premise that women can't afford to travel by themselves because women go on girls trips all the time to different countries, to different states. I mean, I pay for my own travel all the time. It's just, I don't get it. It's
and a lot of women nowadays are making more money than their male counterparts. So it's very likely that a lot of these women are traveling on their own dime. I think this points to something else. A few things here. There is this notion that every woman is like an Instagram model that's putting it out and sleeping with these like rich billionaire men who fly them to Dubai. And that's not how most women travel. Actually, most women are not Instagram models. The only reason you're hyper fixating on them is because they look plastic. So you think they are the attractive woman, and so you care most about what they are doing. Mm-hmm. But most women are not like, DMing some billionaire in Dubai and then going over as like a high-class escort. That's not what's happening.
Yeah.
And this Sam Matheson guy, Sam, I'm so sorry that me going to Argentina to meet my boyfriend's family for a month is such a huge turnoff for you.
But don't you get it?
That's
he
really
doesn't
troubling.
Like that.
He's a pickup artist.
Oh yeah, I did see he was selling like
which is the lowliest form of internet man.
Yeah, he was selling his social courses below the tweet. So
that is so sad. You are basically he is basically running an MLM for men. That is sad. That is very sad. Like this is the male version of LuLaRoe.
Oh my God. But it's worse because at least like LuLaRoe, I feel like in the women MLMs, you at least like make friends and stuff. Not that I would know, but they seem like they're all friends with each other. And they get to go on their little like company trip that they brag about. But these guys are never going to go on the trip with the woman that they're trying to get because they view all women that travel as just some like hoe, essentially. Yeah. And that's absurd.
And I don't know if like this is necessarily about the women. I think what he's trying to do is prey on male insecurity about not being able to take women on these trips. And that's even more disgusting to me because a lot of guys will defend these pickup artists with their whole chest saying like, well, nobody else is caring about men. Nobody else is offering advice to men. These guys online are predators. They are trying to take your money by preying on your insecurity about your relationship status. And I don't know. I just would not listen to them.
And they're full of it. You know, these guys also aren't speaking to guys who frankly have their stuff together. And I noticed a comment on one of our past videos. I think it was one that we made about we were giving kind of dating advice to men and we're like, are incels that bad? You know, that type of question. And somebody commented, you guys need a male co-host because it's so hard out here dating for average or below average men. My thing with that is I don't think below average men are necessarily looking for below average women because they have this unattainable goal of women who are traveling around getting flown out by their boyfriends. It's like, okay, they have a boyfriend, they're getting flown out. Why does it matter if that's a turn off to you? Why are you concerned about them when you can go for somebody who is in your kind of like range in your tax
Olivia,
bracket a little bit?
They would argue that all of those women are going for the chads. Which, by the way, this whole like, 80% of women go for 20% of the men. That's not true. I think that myth comes from the way male psychology actually works, which is very looks oriented. And people say that women lie about this. Well, why does every woman say it? Like women are much more concerned about your personality. And like what kind of life we're going to have with you rather than, is he, a male model? Like, does he have an 8-pack? Nobody cares. And except for maybe the Instagram models that you're going after.
Exactly. It's like if you're going for the materialistic people, you're not going to, if you're below average or average man, you're not going to get the Instagram model that's being flown out to Dubai or whatever. And these are the people that you're complaining about. But, even further than that, I just want to touch on the kind of implication that a woman who travels is just like a gold digger or she just got men funding her lifestyle and stuff. A lot of these people are the same people who complain about the independent boss women. They don't want women to have their own company or to work for the man or to have this great career or make their own money. So what is she to do if she's not supposed to have this career? She's not supposed to make her own money, but she's also not supposed to dig for a little gold when she's looking for a partner? What do you want her to do exactly?
I don't really think they care about women having nice experiences.
They don't.
Honestly.
They literally feel entitled to like a 10 out of 10 Instagram model.
Yeah.
All the time.
It's about possession. It's about ownership. And not to sound like a raging, like OG second wave feminist here, but that's what it really is about. Like about for a lot of these guys that have just been growing increasingly insecure over the years is they just want a woman to possess, right? Like, so that's why any woman who, expresses a little bit of independence is such a huge threat for them because it signals that they can make it out there on their own and they're not completely dependent on their care.
Yeah. And we can definitely go into,
sad.
we could definitely go into
sad.
and it's not just men who, you know, perpetuate this. The next tweet that I put in the, I brought up to you was actually a woman. This is from a Twitter user called Mountain Housewife. Dear married ladies, your approach to sex should be whatever, whenever, and wherever. Then watch your marriage and life thrive. Okay. Thoughts?
So, from a Christian perspective, a woman is supposed to be, you know, like, is supposed to do whatever she can for her husband. But that respect is supposed to be returned in the same light. And that is not always the case. And so this tweet is very troubling to me because it seems like this could be perceived as arguing for marital rape, like not having... Like having sex when you don't want to,
whatever,
and letting your husband do whatever.
Yeah, it's like, okay, whenever. So you know how there's a 6-week window after you give birth, how you're not supposed to have sex or there's an increased risk of infection or tearing your stitches. There has been like several, actually an alarming amount of instances that I've seen online of women having to go back to the ER and get basically re-stitched down there because they followed this. They said, okay, whenever, wherever, or they just got pressured into it by their husband. And I don't think that's right. It's like, what if she's pregnant? What if she's sick? What if she's not in the mood? Right. Am I allowed to not be in the mood? Is that totally against Christian values? I don't think so. And so I think that I have a suspicion that it creates this kind of transactional view of sex when it should be, yes, the husband should, you know, give his body to the wife and the wife should give her body to the husband mutually. I don't think it should take any convincing. If somebody says no, don't be like, well, please don't try to reason. It's just like, I get that there are people stuck in what they consider to be like loveless marriages or relationships without intimacy. That's a different issue than just saying I don't want to do it whenever, wherever, or however. Like that, there's definitely a middle ground. And then my suspicion was kind of confirmed because there were people justifying this in the comments. Somebody kind of called this woman out, you know, this person whose username is social conservative. I assume that they're a Christian conservative. Oh yeah, their bio says something about loving God and their neighbor. Okay, so yeah, where do people come up with this stuff? Why do people like you come up with all kinds of requirements that are nowhere to be found in God's word? This is bondage and puts all sorts of unnecessary pressure on wives. Marriage isn't about sex quotas. I agree with that. Somebody replied, why would a wife refuse her husband without a good reason? That's like a man refusing to pay the bills. What?
Sex is not something that women give up, especially in the context of a marriage.
It goes both ways. It's just
like we should have a completely different view of it. Like it is something very sacred and special. It's not like paying a bill. I do think that a lot of marriages would thrive if like both partners really put intentionality behind, you know, maintaining that physical relationship and that physical attraction. I do think that is so important for marriage. But there are a lot of women out there that are in more abusive marriages, abusive households, and their man is not a godly man. And so doesn't view them as like this precious person that should be taken care of and treated well, which is how you get stuff like women having to go back to the hospital because their husband does not care about the pain they're in after giving birth.
Yeah.
Like, that's horrible to me. And I feel like I understand what's behind this tweet for her, so I don't want to completely trash it. Like, I do think sex is so important for a marriage to thrive, but this idea of wherever, whenever, whatever, no. Like
our wives
people should be able to have
boundaries
and be able to say no.
And viewing it as a job, like it may be the breadwinner's job. I don't even think it's necessarily the man's job to pay all of the bills, especially in this economy. You know, many people can't raise a family off of just one income. But viewing it as a job similar to a man bringing home a paycheck is just, that's a horrid way to view it. It shouldn't be a job. It should not be a chore. Both people should want to do it equally. It should not take coercion or convincing, you know, and it's not something that's owed to you also.
No, definitely not. And just continuing down the line of like really bad religious takes on sex and marriage. Oh, this one is a doozy. This guy is not Christian. In his bio, it says Muslim, founder of MuslimSkeptic.com. He says, the only way to oppose the ongoing liberal sexual degradation and fetishization of children is through the support for minor marriage. Why? Human sexual behavior will either express itself within the normative bonds of marriage, or it will express itself free of these bonds. Thus, any country which denigrates the marriage of adults will inevitably encourage sexual liberation and promiscuity of adults. Likewise, any country which denigrates the marriage of minors will inevitably encourage sexual liberation and promiscuity for minors.
This is horrible.
Sir...
This is horrible. And the example that he gives,
he does not live in reality. I just have to say that.
This is a horrible example. This is a Daily Mail article, so I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. But it's describing a quote-unquote family sex show theater company that urges 5-year-old children to explore their sexual pleasures and sketch their genitalia. I find that equally as abhorrent as saying that these children who obviously cannot consent to sexual content also cannot consent to getting married or to have
sex within that marriage. I'm sorry, they're children.
That is horrible.
Oh my gosh. People on Twitter are freaking nuts, Olivia.
How is this allowed to be up on Twitter? How is this not a crime to advocate for children to have sex and be married?
You know what? I'm glad it's up on Twitter so we can all mercilessly mock and shame.
But I'm just like, I'm just so mad that this has 331 likes. There's 51 retweets. And I mean, there are people being against it, but it's not overwhelmingly. Like, you would think this would be absolutely ratioed, and it's not.
That's very disturbing. Yeah, it's like we view the sexual liberation of the 21st century and say, okay, this is awful. Like, this is now starting to affect kids. So let's go back to a time where it was also affecting kids, but in a puritanical and religious way. It's like, can we just remove kids from the equation, please?
Can we?
That would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. I don't think you have to go the complete opposite way, harming the same people in order to control against, this bad thing that's happening. I think that's ridiculous. Yeah, there is a middle ground. I think we talked about this on one of our earliest episodes, Olivia, that there are currently 2 options being presented for people when it comes to sex, and like neither of them are good. Necessarily.
Right. It's like shame
either
culture.
It's completely bad, or it's like it doesn't matter at all and you should do it with everyone. It's like neither of these are good.
This is just
both of these are bad.
This is extremism on a whole nother level. And yeah, I'm not for it. I'm not a theologian, but I would just have to point out the age of Muhammad's wife. So that's all I'm going to say on that. And I feel like a culture that normalizes that is it doesn't surprise me that this is a take coming out of that culture.
Yeah. All right. Next we have Nathan Alberson.
What you got for us, Nathan?
I'll go ahead and read this one. You can spot a rebellious woman. Read feminist just by the way she walks and dances and stands and goes through doorways. Her body language always says, I don't need anybody. It's very unattractive.
So what I noticed about all these guys is like they're usually in relationships. He's in the thread saying that he's married. And now maybe I don't believe that, but it's like, why are you stating what attracts you to women? Aren't you supposed to be in a monogamous relationship? I mean, in their bio, it says biblical wisdom on sex, culture, film, etc. I mean, this guy is supposed to be imparting his biblical wisdom. Where does it say in the Bible that a woman, like, She who walks through a doorway.
The way she walks through a doorway. How does a non-rebellious and submissive woman walk through a doorway?
Behind a man.
What is he talking about?
He wants women to walk through doorways.
What exactly is he talking about? I'm just picturing him imagining, creating some fake character in his head, and he's just creating a fake character to get mad at so he can tweet about it. But sir, if you have a wife, why do you care if other women are attractive or not?
I really want to know his religious angle, because clearly he's taking this. Somebody in the reply said, women don't live to be attracted to men. Hope this helps. I agree with that. He responded, Nathan says, no, but they should live to be attractive to God. But what did God say about women going through doorways a certain way or standing a certain way?
What are you talking about?
I don't get it. I don't get it.
What is he talking? I'm sorry. I just want to know what he means by a rebellious walk, dance, standing. How do you stand in a rebellious way and go through doorways? What is he mad about? I really feel like he's making up a person to be mad at.
I'm going to go out of my way to go through doorways like a man from now on, whatever that means.
Yeah. Just hold my arms out like this, you know?
We need to get into some economic takes before we run out of time. This was the favorite tweet I saw this week. Okay, this one was the one that I think went the most viral. This has 140,000 likes, was seen 7.8 million times. So this made its freaking rounds, and I have to dispel it because it's so in bad faith. It's so horrible. This person says, this is unironically one of the most concise and easy ways to understand explanations of profit and labor I've ever seen. So of course this is a screenshot of a Reddit post. Why am I not surprised? It's a meme.
Probably on r/anti-word.
Right. I guarantee it is. So it's a meme with two panels. The top is some product. I found out through the comments that it's a motorcycle part, but I don't know what it is. But it says, I have to work an hour before I can afford to buy 3 of these. Then the bottom panel is the guy making kind of a disgruntled face and saying, I make 3,000 of them every hour. And so, yeah, I'm sure to a 12-year-old who has never taken an economics class, this is a really good point. Somebody replied,
oh my gosh, so true.
Somebody replied, I'm dumb. What the freak are those? The OP responds, doesn't matter. The point is the insane gap between this production and his compensation. He does all the labor and his boss gets 99% of the value of that labor. Okay. Somebody else says, do you not understand how supply chains work? They don't.
Clearly not.
They don't.
Clearly not.
They
and
don't.
Clearly he doesn't understand the sheer number of people and processes that went into making this very small part you see in the tweet, right? I think one of the best explanations of this is in iPencil, which is a really short, easy read. We'll link it in the comments. If there's one thing you go to, that link should be it. And essentially the premise of the book is that there's not one single person in the world who can make the pencil, right? Who knows how to do all of it, because the pencil, all of these parts come from so many different parts of the world, and everyone's kind of contributing to make this really small, simple thing that we take for granted every day. But yet there's so many people involved in the process, and it's so cheap because, there's all of these divisions of labor and we make a lot of them, which is probably what's happening here.
So,
right?
Yeah.
This guy would not be able to just, I don't know, spit these out of his mouth and then charge the same amount of money for them, right?
Right. It's okay.
He is not the only person involved, and it's incredibly self-centered for him to believe that there isn't this massive army of people involved in the process of making this thing behind him. And it's pretty incredible to me that so many people are involved in the process of making very simple things. It shows how much people are able to come together in a very seemingly complicated way, but through the free market, we're able to come together and produce things that we need.
I think that part of human nature is absolutely beautiful, how we build these networks and are able to create products that people want and buy. So just to start very locally around him, okay, so he's probably in a factory, in a warehouse. He doesn't own the warehouse. He does not own the machinery. He did not source the material for the machinery. He did not design it. He did not put it together. He did not buy it. But he's using the machinery, whatever it is, to spit out these little rubber discs that apparently go to a motorcycle. Even further back than that, he did not transport the material that little rubber disc needs from wherever to wherever his factory is. He did not mine the raw material from it. You know, he did not take the risk. So he didn't put his own money into buying the machinery, buying the warehouse, finding the people to source the raw material, designing it, advertising it, transporting it out to the stores, putting advertisements on the website, and doing everything that goes into
designing the packaging, creating the packaging, gathering all of the raw materials for the packaging. This guy really thinks, this guy really thinks that he's like the most important person in this process. He doesn't realize that millions of dollars have gone into creating these little rubber parts for motorcycles that are seemingly kind of unimportant.
But please do it by yourself and see how it works out for you.
They're necessary. Yeah. And okay, let me find this frickin' meme that is basically very much related to this. So, you know, like the Chad meme, like, you know, there's Chad and there's like the dorky guy. I don't know what his name is. Okay. So there's like 4 Chads in this meme. One says, I grow the coffee. One says, I refine the coffee. I package the coffee. I brew the coffee. And then there's this dweeb with like a Monopoly outfit on or something with all these money bags and a mansion around him. And it says, I literally collect money for doing nothing. Okay, communists, if you're so mad about business owners being lazy and doing nothing, start your own business, babe. You won't. Try it.
Do it. You won't.
You're too lazy and you don't have enough of what it takes to start a business. You aren't willing to stay up for hours and hours and hours and basically be the last person to collect a paycheck in order to make something successful. You won't do it. You hate business owners because you're freaking jealous and you don't have the gumption to actually do something and create something for yourself and for the world.
Period. Speaking of lazy freaking people.
Period.
I want to bring up this tweet from, I believe it's Robert Reich. Is that how you say his name? Rich? I don't know. The myth of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps is a cruel hoax designed to convince poor people and people of color that the injustices they face are a result of their own actions rather than an oppressive system rigged against them. Okay, so we shouldn't pull up ourselves by our bootstraps. We shouldn't do anything for ourselves. You think that white supremacy is so oppressive that I literally cannot do anything for myself. Damn, you don't have any faith in us, Robert. Why don't you think we can do anything for ourselves? Like, this is the same logic that tells Black people, oh my God, they can't get an ID to vote. We must end voter ID. They can't do this and that. We must end this. It's like, who are these? Who is actually being kept by these barriers?
It's very infantilizing.
I feel so infantilized right now. It's like, what is so wrong with me as a person of color that I can't make my own money, that I can't get my own job, that I can't pull myself up by my own bootstraps? I'm not, it's just, it's absurd to see that we live in a country where somebody like Barack Obama, who grew up being raised by a single mother, became president. And you say that Black people.
But Olivia, that's a myth.
We cannot.
That didn't happen. It's a myth.
I mean, there's so many famous. I hate to use athletes as an example because I guess it's kind of a trope. But so many people like Michael Jordan pull themselves up by our bootstraps. Performers, singers, business people. Oprah Winfrey is a great example of somebody who had a really rough life. She was assaulted. She was abused as a child. She grew up in poverty, and she is one of the only Black female billionaires in the world. And is there something to be said for the distribution of how many billionaires there are actually? Maybe. I would guess probably actually, but it's possible. And how dare you tell Black people, how dare you tell poor people, how dare you tell people of color to just sit there and that nothing is the result of their own actions. It's not an oppressive system rigged against everything. Like the kid who gets a job at McDonald's, works his way up to become the manager, works his way up to become the franchise owner of that store. Like, nothing was stopping him from doing that. That is ridiculous to suggest.
Yeah, exactly. And actually the myth that your station in life, you are assigned to that for the rest of your life and you have no control over where you go, that is a cruel hoax and a myth designed to keep poor people poor.
That sounds like the caste system.
Perpetual victimhood is a soul killer. Yeah, and the American dream that we often hear is dead, it's very much still alive. Like, there has been a lot of market intervention that I will give you, and there are some things that are going to be harder for our generation than for our parents, but that's because people keep trying to intervene in the free market and decide outcomes, and it doesn't work, right? But the American dream is still very much alive, and people definitely are able to rise through the ranks and determine where their life goes. And this idea that, like, okay, if you're born poor, then you're going to be poor for the rest of your life. How disgusting and despicable for you to tell someone that. Like, that just essentially removes all hope from someone. And that actually is true in some countries, but it's not true in America.
It's true in countries where they have a caste system, like in India, where they have very little upward mobility. But this was kind of what this guy is perpetuating. And he's telling people you have no upward mobility. There is a system rigged against you. And it's a defeatist attitude that has literally helped nobody. Mm-hmm. And I think all it does is he wants people to remain on the welfare cycle. He wants people to have, generations and generations of people who will never rise above poverty until this rigged, oppressive, white supremacist government is overthrown. Is he going to do anything to do that? No. He literally just wants brown and black people and poor people to be below him forever.
Yeah. Well, and there is something to be said about why socialists hate this idea that you have some kind of responsibility over what you do in life. And it's because if capitalism is actually oppressive, then if you make a bunch of bad choices in your life and you end up in a bad position, then you can point to this oppressor and say, look, it's not my fault. I was doing the best I could, and yet this oppressive system was keeping me down. But the reality is that when we have a free market, we have ample opportunity to raise our situation and go on to do great things. There is ample opportunity because you have the freedom to do so. And when you have the freedom to either have successes or make some serious mistakes and not try, you have no one to blame but yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's the hardest thing of all.
And let me just put a disclaimer that, obviously we don't live in the freest market that we could be. That's kind of why FEE exists. We're advocating for a freer market. And with this podcast, that's what we're doing as well. But yes, you're right. There still is ample opportunity. I do concede that the government does make it very hard for small business owners. Like, I know personally, because I am one. But it's just no comparison to the absolute, just complete and utter lack of upward mobility under a communist system or under a caste system. This is just, there is a reason why migrants are pouring into this country, fleeing to this country, and it's for economic mobility in many cases.
Yeah. Absolutely. And all of the luxuries of life that capitalism has given us, and that kind of translates. I guess this will be the last tweet we do. We have many more.
we could honestly just do one of these episodes like once every couple months or something, because there's just like so much content.
Girl, there's so much here. Okay. So this guy, I think his username is hilarious. Hurt Copain.
I do love that.
And then his @ is @Saeed DiCaprio. He had a few takes that I had serious issue with, but let's talk about this one because it's the most ridiculous. He has a picture of Kevin Hart drinking sadly. Like Kevin Hart looks sad while he's drinking. And the caption says, "We literally live on a planet that produces food and water. How did we fumble enough to need multiple streams of income to survive?"
Okay. So let me break something down for you, Hurt Copain. I hate this argument so much, but I kind of love it because it's so easy to just like toss it in the trash. Everybody complains, oh my God, we live in a world where there's water flowing naturally, food grows naturally. Okay, you are totally and 100% within your right, not on private property, on your own property, to harvest water, filter it yourself, grow your own plants, harvest them yourself, process them yourself, create your own farm. Like if everybody lived on a homestead, then yeah, we probably wouldn't need everybody to have like a side hustle and a 9-to-5. But guess what? There's a reason you don't live on a homestead. You don't want to. You would rather pay $2 for a bottle of water than to go through the whole filtration process yourself. And that's fine. I would rather not spend all my time going through a water filtration process and rigging up my generator and refining my own crude oil to put in that generator and to create like electricity. Like I totally understand why humans evolved beyond hunter-gatherers. Okay. But what you were arguing for is kind of a return to tradition, but without the responsibility of holding that tradition. Because if you want to be able to, these food is a human right, people, these clean water is a human right, people, you don't want to do it yourself. You are not owed somebody else's labor. And that's the issue that I have with this tweet.
I think there's a denial about the fact that labor is just natural to human existence. Like if you want anything in this life, you're going to have to do something in order to get it. And I'm sorry that that's the case, but it really does feel like people, I hate to sound like Kim Kardashian, but people just really don't want to work right now.
You're right. And you should say it.
But like they don't want to work. And here's the other thing. You're absolutely right about water filtration. And an interesting thing I learned as I prepared to go travel to somewhere that used to be a first world country and now is really suffering, I've learned from other travelers that a lot of the time they don't order regular water at restaurants in other countries. I don't know if this is the case in Argentina, but every Argentine I know exclusively drinks sparkling water, and it's because the water in a lot of places is poisonous. Like it will make you sick. So you have to order bottled water because they don't have the proper systems to clean and filter that water. Even in America, it's hard for us to get clean water out of the faucets, but you can just buy, one of those filtration things for your fridge and there you go. But the fact that we have clean, healthy water on hand pretty much whenever we want, like even restaurants just give it away for free. That is a miracle. That is a miracle. And not everybody is lucky enough to have that. And by the way, in your ideal hunter-gatherer society, you will have to be hunting and physically killing animals and bringing that back to your tribe, or everyone will starve.
Something tells me her cocaine is not about that life.
Everyone has to. No. And yet we are all sitting on Twitter complaining about capitalism and dating and women and trans people and guns, and not thanking God for the blessings that we have in this life. And the fact that we have the luxury.
I have to have another stream of income. I have to sell weed.
I'm so sorry. Congrats on having a car.
Excuse me? Are you not grateful for the fact that you don't have to go out and fight a freaking bear for some deer and drag it back to your camp and kill it yourself and then go and boil some water over a fire so you can have some water? Even on that point about foreign countries, my boyfriend just came back from a bachelor trip for his friend and he was in Cabo. I even told him, don't even get a drink with ice cubes in it down there, because Mexicans will tell you, don't trust ice cubes. Don't trust anything that comes out of the tap down there. I love the fact that it's so many first worlders on Twitter sharing their little first world problems. And I hate to do there's kids in Africa that are starving, that trope, but there are people all over the world without access to clean water. Yeah. There are people all over the world without access to food. It is not
and people have no idea that the abundance in their life is because capitalism and free markets, we have somewhat of that. We have some semblance of that. And that has allowed people to go out and solve problems, and not just problems, but made up problems that are now, we've solved those too. And we have all of these luxuries and we're so freaking blessed. And it drives me nuts that like 15-year-olds sit on Twitter all day and complain about having to work when I'm assuming most of them are too young to actually work. But like the idea of work itself, I think, is what people find to be unfair. And the idea of working for someone else, people think that's exploitation. No, babe, be grateful you have a job. And if you don't want to work for someone else, start a business, okay? But everything in life takes work. Everything worthwhile takes work, and it's not a bad thing. It actually gives you purpose. And if you've ever taken like a day or two to sit in your room and be on Netflix all day, you will be depressed because you have no meaning.
I personally,
meaning is actually what brings happiness to people. I
personally feel so rewarded when I complete a project or when I, turn something into a client or I complete a piece or even when one of these episodes goes up, because I view that as work as well. And I view it as like, okay, we're spreading the message. We accomplished something for today. Congrats. Like, yay, now I get to take the money I make from this and buy as much water as I want or buy as much food as I want or travel and make myself unattractive to men while posting my travel pictures on Instagram. I can do whatever I want with that money. And I also love having multiple income streams. I feel like that is, I guess it's different for everybody. To me, it makes my life and my career and my work schedule very, very flexible. So I'm able to take time in the middle of the day on a Tuesday afternoon to shoot a podcast. I love that. I love having first world problems. I'll never complain about the fact that a bottle of water is $2. And, I guess I could go to a babbling brook in Alaska and get it for free, but I'm not about to do that. So stop complaining.
Amen. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap. Olivia, where can we find you?
You can follow me and all my great takes, not these trash ones, on Twitter at Rondeau Olivia, that's RONDEAULIVIA, or on Instagram at Rondeau.Olivia.
And you can find me at Liberty Anders. Remember, click like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications of new episodes that come out, and leave us a comment. Send us, when you see them, the worst takes on Twitter, and we'll feature it in the next episode. But yeah,
thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.